Welcome back to Pest Control Unlocked. I'm your host, Konstantin Schwartz. When you're servicing a large commercial account, a food processing plant, a pharmaceutical facility, or a million square foot distribution center, you're not really selling pest control. You're selling compliance. You're selling the paperwork. You're selling the audit trail. Because if your technician clears a rodent issue but forgets to log the barcode on a bait station, or if a chemical report is missing a signature during an audit, the facility fails. And if they fail, you lose the contract. Today, we're going to look at one of the biggest hidden friction points in commercial pest control: the cost of providing the work, the fragility of compliance systems, and the delay between service delivery and getting paid. And more importantly, we're going to explore how emerging infrastructure, including connected hardware, automated contracts, and digital ledgers, could change how commercial pest control actually operates. If you run commercial routes, you already know this. The administrative burden of proving you did the work is almost as high as the cost of doing the work itself. Commercial clients bind us to strict service level agreements, SLAs. They require guaranteed response times, detailed logs of treatments, proof of compliance with increasingly strict regulations. Whether that's around rodenticide usage, mechanical trapping, or chemical application, the standards are rising. But to really understand this, you have to step back and look at what compliance actually means in the commercial environment. Because this isn't just internal record keeping. You're operating inside a multi-layered compliance ecosystem. At the top, you have regulatory bodies, federal, state, and local, setting rules around chemical usage, reporting standards, and environmental safety. Then you have the third-party auditors, organizations like AIB, BRC, who are inspecting facilities on behalf of their customers. And then you have the client themselves, the food manufacturer, the pharmaceutical company, the logistics provider, who is ultimately accountable if something goes wrong. When you service that site, you are stepping into that entire chain of accountability. And here's the critical point. Your paperwork is not documentation, it is evidence. Evidence that the right protocol was followed, the right materials were used, and the service was delivered within agreed timeframes. Because if the evidence is incomplete, inconsistent, or missing, the facility doesn't just get a warning. They can fail an audit, they can lose certifications, they can shut down production lines, and in highly regulated environments, that can translate into millions of dollars in lost revenue for the client. And when that happens, the question becomes very simple. Who is responsible? And this is where the model becomes very clear. In commercial pest control, you're not just delivering a service, you're actively mitigating risk on behalf of your client. You're reducing the probability of audit failure, you're reducing the risk of regulatory breach, and in some cases, you're protecting against events that could shut down an entire facility. In other words, the customer is not buying pest control, they're buying risk transfer. And yet, the system used to manage that risk is still fragile. A technician scans a barcode. That data gets uploaded into a central system. The back office generates a report, and then the accounts receivable waits 30, 60, sometimes 90 days to get paid. That entire chain is slow, dependent on human input, and prone to failure. And from a financial perspective, it ties up a meaningful portion of your working capital in receivables. And yet, the entire system still relies on manual inputs, scanned barcodes, and human verification. So the question becomes, what if risk wasn't managed through paperwork, but enforced directly by the system itself? Now, before we jump into solutions, let's ground this. None of what we're about to discuss is widely deployed in pest control today, but elements of this model are already being tested in adjacent industries, such as logistics, supply chain tracking, and also in real estate transactions. So this is not science fiction. It's a direction travel, similar to residential, and at the center of it is a different way of thinking about contracts. Today, a service level agreement is essentially a document, a PDF backed by trust. If something goes wrong, you review the logs, you negotiate, and you resolve it manually. But what if the contract itself could verify performance? Instead of relying on manual reporting, imagine a system where connected hardware records activity in real time. Every event is timestamped and verified, and the contract automatically checks whether service conditions were met. This is where technologies like smart contracts come into play. A smart contract is simply software that executes an agreement automatically when conditions are met. And what this does is not just improve efficiency, it fundamentally changes how risk is managed. Instead of relying on manual verification, compliance becomes system enforced and continuously validated. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a connected monitoring device in a food processing plant. At 2 a.m., the device triggers. That event is recorded. Your technician arrives at 7 a.m., resolves the issue, and logs the correct treatment. Now, instead of that data sitting in a report waiting to be reviewed, the system automatically checks: was the response time within SLA? Was the correct protocol followed? If the answer is yes, the system triggers payment automatically. No invoicing, no disputes, no 60-day payment cycles. Now, to be clear, this is not fully operational at scale in our industry today, but the building blocks are already emerging, and the implication is significant. You reduce friction in compliance, you accelerate cash flow, and most importantly, you reduce operational risk for the client. And at this point, most operators will think, this sounds interesting, but deploying connected hardware across a commercial portfolio is expensive. And that's absolutely true. The capex required to build a fully connected monitoring network is a real barrier. But here's where the model begins to shift. Instead of the operator owning all the hardware, you can start to separate ownership of the infrastructure from operation of the service. In some emerging models, hardware is financed externally by the facility itself, by a third party provider, or by structured investment vehicles. The operator installs and manages the system. The infrastructure is funded separately. The result, you get visibility and compliance benefits without carrying the full capital burden while still maintaining control over service delivery and risk mitigation. Now, let's talk about something the industry consistently undervalues: data. Every single day, your technicians are collecting pest activity patterns, environmental signals, treatment effectiveness, seasonal changes. Right now, that data sits inside your CRM. It's operational, but it's not monetized. But as systems become more connected and structured, that data becomes far more valuable. Aggregated and anonymized, it can create real-time ecological maps, predictive insights on pest pressure, localized risk models. And that data can be valuable to municipalities, agriculture, real estate developers, public health organizations. So the operator is no longer just delivering service, they are generating intelligence. Now, at this point, it's fair to ask, if this is so powerful, why isn't it already happening? The answer is simple. Until recently, the infrastructure was not ready. The cost was too high, the systems were too complex, and the user experience wasn't good enough. And most importantly, no facility manager wants to deal with new technology layers. For this to work, it has to be completely invisible. The complexity must sit behind the scenes, and that is exactly what is starting to change. If this model evolves, it will reshape competition. It will favor operators who already have a strong commercial density, can service accounts efficiently across locations, and can scale data collection across a portfolio. Because automation and data advantages scale with footprint, and it will reduce reliance on manual reporting, invoicing cycles, and the reactive service models. Now, the facility manager will never see most of this. They won't care about infrastructure, automation, or how the data is processed. They care about outcomes: that audits pass, that compliance is guaranteed, and that everything just works. And for the operator, that's where the real shift happens: less friction, faster payment, more control over the contract. Because in the end, this isn't about technology. It's about how risk is transferred, verified, and managed in commercial pest control. That's all for today. If you want to discuss strategy or tell me I'm completely off, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm Konstantin Schwartz, and this is Pest Control Unlocked. Thank you very much for listening.